pulled the jersey, you know. They called holding. I was hoping they would let it ride, you know, but it wasn't holding.
Is that something they typically let ride?
I'm not sure. I think based off the playoff games that we were in, playoff games that I saw, you know, sometimes the refs let some things like that go, you know, just depend on the ref.
All right, so the referee crew was asked how much debate there was amongst the crew when that flag was thrown. Head official Carl Sheffer said there was no debate, just making sure that he had. And once he told us what he had, he went about our business. Dan Orlovsky joining us now from New York City. Dan, good morning. You got us?
What up? I got you.
Hey. Do you have a problem with that holding call, Dan?
I do. I do. The reality is 57 minutes plus in that football game, there wasn't a single holding penalty thrown. There was one pass interference flag that was thrown, not a single holding penalty. So the theme of the game is in many ways like referees are allowing those guys to play. And when I watch that play, two things that stand out to me are that's the play that we're throwing a holding penalty on. Is there a tug and a hold? Of course there is. And everybody, I've heard defensive players say millions of times there is on every single play. Great. So that's the one. This is the one that stands out. And the most, I guess, standout thing to me is body language post-play. Juju Smith-Schuster never intimates to the officials, what are we looking at? And like 3rd and 8, he's the guy running the winning route, and he is the guy that can feel a hold or a tug better than anybody can see it. And he doesn't have any type of body language towards the officials of going, where's the flag? How did you miss that? That's such a missed call. And so the reality of me watching that, and I was at the game, and I'm watching their sideline for Kansas City, and I'm watching Juju, and there's nothing like them going on, throwing arms up in the air and disappointment of you missed a call. And the fact that they went that long in the game without throwing a penalty when it comes to holding, and that's the one that we're going to throw the flag on, I think it's a bad call. 16 hours after the game, I still think it's a bad call. Even Bradberry admitting he did hold, yes. I still think it's a bad call because of what it was leading into that moment, and then watching the wide receivers' body language or lack thereof after it. I think it's a bad call. Bad call.
Dan, they already threw the flag though. Like the bench doesn't have to react in any way because they're looking at the yellow laundry on the field. They can see it.
What about Juju?
Like Juju. So now what you're saying is we are measuring how egregious a hold is based off the level of whining that goes along with the call. We talked about this earlier, Dan. You mentioned the call early on in the game on the slant where he looked like he tugged him a little bit before he wrapped around with the front hand to try to knock the ball down. That's at the point of attack. That's Juju thinking, I'm about to catch the ball. I'm emotional because I felt like I got tugged right at that moment. He was held at the start of the route. Juju might not know the rule. Juju might have think he got clamped up. When you look at this play, you can't, and I'm sitting with like great basketball minds here. This is basically saying because you let calls go or because Michael Jordan or LeBron James or whoever it is trying to finish the game and they get hit on the elbow, we have to swallow our whistle right now because we'll give up 2 free throws. No, they're supposed to make that call because it's holding.
Let me ask you
That's
this, Ryan,
it.
too. He did it twice.
Yes.
And that's what, when I looked at it again, it's twice. By the way, it isn't egregious. Sometimes there's shades of gray. And part of me wishes, because of the way that game was going, that there hadn't been a call. But when you look at it,
I agree with that, though.
Twice. And so, Dan, I'm thinking if he doesn't come back and he spins him, and one of the things always I love listening to and talking to officials about things they're looking for in multiple sports, but in pro football, the guys always talk about in the NFL, spinning, moving him. He did move him, and so I'm thinking, oh, wow. They didn't get hosed, Dan. I hear what you're saying, by the way. You make great points. They didn't get hosed with the call. The call, do you swallow the whistle in that case? Do you do something that's right out in the open? And the flag was down. They were definitive about the call, at least. They didn't take their time. They weren't debating it in their minds. And I'm like, you know what? You got to let it go. Is it the worst thing in the world? They get hosed? Is it like a pass interference penalty not called in New Orleans? No, it wasn't like that.
No, right. Well, listen, let me say this.
I get where Dan is coming from. I just don't think, respectfully, he's explaining it right. Let me break this down for y'all, because I think, especially you, Wilbon, you're going to appreciate where I'm going when we think about basketball and we think about officials like Joey Crawford, Steve Javie, and some of the great officials, Dick Pavetta, even though Nick Pavetta, as they used to joke and call him, and all of this other stuff in basketball and football, but in football, I understand where you're coming from. The call was the right call. There's no disputing that. There was definitely holding. Ryan, we're not refuting that. Here's what I want y'all to think about for a second. Moments matter. Moments in sports history matter.
They do.
The theater of sports is what we pay to see. You are in a situation where you're driving downfield. If that call isn't called, Kansas City kicks a field goal. They go up 3 anyway. But instead of 8 seconds on the clock or 4 seconds on the clock, now you got under 2 minutes. Jalen Hurts has handed the ball, and Jalen Hurts at that moment has the ball with under 2 minutes left. After Patrick Mahomes, I don't even care about the timers. I know it matters, but I'm not saying that. It's under 2 minutes left. Not Patrick Mahomes. He gave you the lead, and now it's Jalen Hurts with the ball with under 2 minutes left, and you got to go downfield. You can tie it, you can win it with a touchdown, or you can lose because you just don't get it done. It's the Super Bowl. And what I'm saying to you is that even though today, in this day and age where we see such strident, such a level of focus on getting the call right and depersonalizing everything, the reality of the situation is that when you're talking about the Super Bowl, with a game like that, tied 35-35 at that particular moment, what I wanted to see was that. I wanted to see Kansas City take the lead, and I wanted to see Jalen Hurts have the football. And I understand you're saying, again, the call was the right call, but there are many times throughout sports history where the right call gets missed or the wrong call gets made. It's happened throughout sports. Many champions have been crowned as champions when that has happened. It would have been nice to see that yesterday.
Listen, Arian Foster, the official didn't read the script, okay?
I understand what I'm saying.
The thing is this, though. What happens is, and because we're doing all of these ifs, what happens is if they miss that call, and let's say Harrison Butker misses the field goal, and now the Philadelphia Eagles go down and kick for 3, we're talking about this call anyway, because now we're asking, was the ever, even though I've been saved? That ain't how it works. At some point, you got to do the right thing, and it's the right thing.
Yeah, RC just gave y'all $1 million worth of game right there on that whole rundown about when they're going to call.
Nobody knows that.
That was for you. When they're going to call holding and when they're not going to call holding. I don't know if you got that or not, Dan, but it doesn't matter. The point is, in that situation,
Wednesday.
In that situation, they were doing those whip routes and they were killing the Eagles.
Yes.
And they were scoring touchdowns on him. And their answer to that was to put him in press. When you're in press like that, you don't have much room to work with.
Right.
Once he puts his eyes in the backfield, he's dead because he's assuming that he's cutting off the route. So, I mean, especially when the DB himself says he did it, it's hard for us to make an argument that they shouldn't make it.
You know what's fascinating to me, Dan, before I give it to you, and Ninko made this point, I wanted to make it while we were seeing that part of the video. He said that he genuinely believes one of the reasons the call is made is that Bradberry is wearing white sleeves, and he's playing against a player wearing a white jersey, and he's wearing dark gloves. And he actually said he should be wearing white gloves, and that it is less noticeable. You notice that a lot of the other players...
Leave it to the Patriots to learn how to cheat better. Whoa!
I mean, it is interesting that even down to that little kind of detail.
All right.
Here's the reason I enjoyed RC's analogy, but I don't agree with it. Because... to me, the officials in all sports set a tone throughout a game. This is what we're going to call tonight. We're going to let this kind of stuff go, and we're going to make this kind of call here. It's not about whether we've been robbing and stealing all of our lives. It's about tonight we're not calling this stuff. Like we're letting it go, and then in that
you wanted it to be the purge, huh? You just want the purge?
It was the only time they called that all night long.
All right. So after being on for an hour now, I think 2 things come to mind. One, there is real disappointment on my end, and that's fair. That's not fair. Excuse me. Like I sit here and I think. It's the morning after the Super Bowl, and all I really want to do is talk about Jalen Hurts' incredible performance and see how that game ended if he got the ball back down. Or, we got to sit in how great Patrick Mahomes is. We're not sitting in that enough, on and off the field. And I think the second part is this, and I'll speak directly to RC and Dom and Chris on this one. I'm hearing you guys say that like obvious holdings happen on that play. 2 obvious moments, right? I can't get over the fact that there is no reaction by Juju Smith-Schuster. I was in the stadiums, as was RC, and I watched the sideline. There's no reaction. So for like when I look in the earlier part of the game, there's a clip early part in the game, and watch Juju on this play. Like there's an obvious animated reaction of I got held. There's a flag here. PI holds something.
And they don't throw it.
And they don't throw the